Warning, this episode covers sensitive subject matter. Welcome to Culmination, where we're not experts, but we sure have a lot to say. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the aspiring vet tech Gus Fredenburgh to discuss acceptance and loss. And with that, let's get started. So my first question to you is, what is acceptance?
Well, to me, acceptance is finally getting to the spot where you know it happened, there's nothing you could have done about it, and now you're just trying to move on from there and see if you can do anything better, so if something like that ever happens again, you can be better about it by the next time it happens.
Mm-hmm. And this can be anything. Just acceptance of like an opinion you don't like, or more concentrated, we're talking about loss in this episode.
Yeah. But it can also be like losing a pet, or one of the examples I've seen with my siblings is if one of my older brothers was in almost a year-long relationship, and when he finally broke up with her, it was really hard because the other person kept messaging him saying, "Come on, I'm sorry, I'll work on myself," and because they didn't want to accept that they had broken up, and he wanted it to happen, but since they kept messaging him, he wasn't able to let go and also accept that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because you just hear my brother just having a conversation with my parents, and they just keep saying, "Delete them from your phone." And it's like, no, but what if they do something? What if they're gonna try and say something about me, and I need to be able there to?
Oh, right. Well, that's hard because that's acceptance from the other end that is the issue.
Yeah.
You cannot control that, unfortunately, but what we're going to focus on in this episode is more so just how we can accept our own circumstances. Things we can't control, but things we have to accept.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing, acceptance is. You know?
Yeah.
Because you obviously know something happens. You obviously have experienced loss or have been wronged. You're aware of it, is the thing.
Yeah.
But it's so, if you're aware of it, then why is it so hard to accept?
Personally, I feel like it's just hard to accept things sometimes because either you've had that thing for so long, or that thing was such a big part of your life, and could have been there on a daily basis, weekly basis, or just every other day.
Mm-hmm.
But once that thing's gone, because since it was there so often, you always were used to it being right there, and when it came to be that time during any day or that certain day of the week, it's gone now, and now you're just like, wait, what am I supposed to do now?
Right.
What's the other thing I'm supposed to do? I have this free spot of time. What am I going to do with it?
Right. It's just your entire life, the way it works, is changed forever.
Like if you had like a dog growing up, just a childhood pet, and every time you came home from school, you expected it to be at the door waiting to jump on you. Then you'd say hi, everything. Then you run off, and the dog follows you to go do your homework.
Right.
Well, when the day finally comes and the dog has to be put down, or it dies for any reason at all, and you're gonna come home from school that one day, and it's just not gonna be the same because you're gonna be like, "Hey, where's the?" And then you remember, oh, right.
It's just that reminder every day.
Exactly.
And we don't want to accept that. Why would you want to accept that?
No one ever wants to be able to accept anything. That's the way I see it. Because most people know everyone is afraid of change, and that is one of the biggest things in life. Like, even for me, the change I don't like is having to try new foods. I'm an extremely picky eater.
Right.
I've only kind of just recently started trying new foods, Just because some people are going like, Gus, you're 18. Come on. You need to actually expand your palate here. You can't just keep eating hot dogs and pizza for the rest of your life. And I always go, watch me. I'm gonna do it. But then they actually show me this food. I was like, okay, you know what? It's actually not that bad. That may actually come back into play later. I may try that again.
Right. That's accepting change in a different way, just because,
Yeah.
you're kind of gaining more than losing, I guess.
Yeah. That's, you can see it like that.
But that is a good point, because it is acceptance.
Yeah, it's just on a much smaller scale.
Right.
Like
So,
it's a thing where you play video games on a pretty constant basis, and you have, I don't know, an Xbox or a PlayStation, and then, oh no, your grades went too low, and your parents took it away for a month or so. You have to accept that you're not going to be able to play that for a while.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. Like that same thing as trying new food. It's on a much smaller scale, but you still have to accept, oh, well, I can't just come home and play video games each day after school now.
Right. And it's like with the food, broadening the palate makes it easier for when you're in situations, and let's say your wife or girlfriend takes you out to dinner and they put this weird stir fry with mushrooms and corn and scrambled eggs, and it's like, wait a second here. I eat plain white rice with nothing on it, and you're telling me there's mushrooms in this.
Eat this? What? Who do you think I am?
Yeah, and it's like, how are you supposed to prepare for this unless you broaden the palate? And then with the video game example, that's different because that's a punishment.
Yeah.
Like they take away your system, and now you have to adapt. But that is a loss. It's not a permanent loss, but it is a loss.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that punishment teaches you something. It teaches you, all right, grades are important, not just because of my future or whatnot, but also if I don't get them up, then I'm going to lose my privileges, like playing games or seeing friends.
Yeah.
So what all can you learn from acceptance, small or big?
Personally, acceptance is what you can learn from it is you're going to be able to grow as a person in the end from it, because you're going to be able to learn, because it may happen several more times, either in bigger or smaller situations, but you're going to be able to learn not everything can stay the same, and you're going to learn to start living without certain things in your life, and realizing that certain things are going to come and go, or some things might just stay, or some things you'll have in very small portions and very small parts of your life.
In some instances, because obviously not all, but is that a good thing that life changes? I just want to know your opinion on that.
I think it goes both ways, to be honest, because it's good to know that life is going to change and that you're going to have to adapt, because that's what life is always about. You're going to have to adapt to a new situation. Like when you finally go off to college and you're living by yourself, you have to learn how to do stuff by yourself. You have to learn to do your own laundry, learn to cook, and go get your own groceries, and not just rely on your parents.
Right.
Also be bad, like, because you're going to have to learn to accept that, oh, I have people who are going to be in my life that I love and care about very much, but they're, at some point I'm going to lose them. I may not know when and I may not know how.
Right.
But you may lose them, and you're going to have to learn, I'm going to lose loved ones and people that I care about, and I'm just going to know when.
That's a great point, because especially with the college example, we start in this bubble, like in our hometown, our city, our district.
Yeah.
And we have this pool of friends pool of peers in general in grade levels.
Yeah.
And, we get to know them. We befriend people. We have all these connections, big or strong, like acquaintance or best friends.
Yeah,
and then when we move on, it's exciting for the next chapter. But what is going to happen with all these people? Like going separate ways.
Because we've been our school, we've been growing up with these same people for almost the past 10 years of our lives. Then once middle
Right.
school, we got to see more of the people from two or three of the other schools. And then we started growing up with those people. And for the last 5 or 6 years, we've all been together in these classes, switching out, slowly like learning more and more about each other. And now once you come around, everyone's going away and you're going to have to make another circle because you had people that you grew up with. Now you have to make the next circle of people you're going to be hanging out with in college and so on. It's going to be the same thing once you're done with college. Once you're an actual adult, you have a job and a life going and you're living by yourself and everything. You're just going to have to keep making new circles as time goes on.
Right. And how do you think we can cope with these losses of all these friends?
Well, I think, well, as many people do, they always keep in contact. You're not always going to be able to see those people, but you can try your best to stay in contact. Be like, hey, why don't we have like a monthly meetup? Or if they're really close and you guys can see each other on a pretty constant basis, you can say, hey, let's meet up a few times a week. If there's any problems with it, we can reschedule for another time. Or maybe during the summer when we all have a bunch of free time, we can all go on like a week-long trip or something.
Yeah.
But you're always going to have to be prepared for the next part when you're not going to be able to stay with that same circle of friends, because as time goes on, you're going to grow apart from people because you're going to see that, oh, me and this person, it's not that we don't like each other. Like you said this to me last night. It's not that we don't like each other or we disagree on anything. It's just we're two very different people now that we've gotten to this point in our life.
Yeah. And that might be hard to accept. Like, if you have a friend like that who you grew up with them since kindergarten, you were best friends, you would always hang out with each other and play with Nerf guns or play video games together or something. And then when you make it into high school or even junior high or college on the other side.
Middle school in general, it's kind of just because once middle school comes around, that's when everything starts expanding. That's when you have all these different classes besides those same 3 ones you went to every day during elementary. And once junior high hits, you have like all these clubs and those classes, and now you have to do the extracurriculars and sports, and people are at the parties, even though we're still in middle school.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going on from there, because once high school hits, that's like the big space where it's like, all right, so you're going to have to be doing this, 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 and this. Your homework, you have your extracurriculars, you have these sporting events, and you have all these special classes you have to do. Then you have to make sure you make time for the homework, but also make sure you try and find time to still spend it with those friends of yours.
Yeah. And it's hard to accept that big of a change, but
I think that's why they practice it through middle school, though, because they say it's to prepare you on how to work on the schedule there when you finally get to the high school. But in reality, it's not that they're preparing you for how the schedule works there. It's preparing you on saying, hey, we're not going to say this outright, but you're going to have to learn that you're going to spread away from certain people and make new ones, meet new ones, and have to do a lot of other stuff rather than just do a few classes. Once a month, you get to do this cool extracurricular activity, and then you go home and relax. It's not going to be like that anymore. You're going to have to do stuff on a pretty constant basis, and there's going to be a big change once you're finally out of these middle schools.
And there's definitely two sides of the coin there. I mean, you can look at it like the glass half full and half empty, if you will. But it's just, you look at this big change and it's either exciting because, your mindset is, oh, I'm going to do marching band because I want to do marching band. Or it's, my parents are forcing me to do marching band because I don't want to do anything else.
And I don't do anything after I come home from school. I do my homework, then I just sit around the rest of the time. My parents don't like me doing that.
Right. So it's all about the mindset, really.
Yeah, because for me personally, I've never really been much of a social person, and like the only time I really talked in my other classes was if I need to do projects, or I just do a bit of small talk, to be honest, with other people in my class. Like if we had a few things in common, I'd be able to talk about that with those people every once in a while. But most of the time, I'd just kind of be sitting around just listening to music, trying to do my homework. But once I was finally in classes with my friends and I was at lunch sitting with them, that's when I was finally able to come out and just be able to like, hey, it's only been like a quarter of the day, but hey, how you guys been? It feels like it's been forever. I know we only see each other 5 days a week, but it's not really us most of the time.
Yeah. Those moments are always good, you know?
Yeah. Those are the moments that's why people always say high school and college are some of the best years of your life, because you're going to have all these memories from your classes and just times when you're hanging out with your friends in school or even out of school, and you're going to be able to look back at those and say, man, I wish I could still be there right now, because that was so much fun.
Yeah, and the reason why we look back at it is just because these things do come to an end eventually.
Yeah, but that's why you have to try and make the most of it.
Right.
You don't, like, personally for me, high school, the first 2 years was not exactly that fun for me, or just good to me in general. I didn't have a good time. My classes, even though I wasn't really challenging classes, I just wasn't putting enough effort into them. And I thought either I'm not smart enough and not putting enough effort in, or I just don't really feel like this is working for me.
Yeah.
Then once sophomore year came around and they told us about the Oaks, I realized I'd rather be able to prepare to have myself a job, or so I can have a good field in a way I can get into something right out of high school. So I'll be prepared and I know I'll have a stable and a semi-stable life when I get out, instead of having to work. Okay, I have to put all this stuff in my transcripts. I need to do these activities. But since I went to the Oaks, it made it so much easier to me, I feel like, because they still did all the regular classes, but they did it. I feel like when they did the academics, they did it a whole lot better than the way regular high school does, because the way regular high school does it, I feel like, is they push everything on you and then they expect you to have it done by the next day. Like math class, most of the time they give you the homework, it's due tomorrow. They don't give you like a few days. Sometimes they do if it's a big thing, like if you're practicing for a test.
Yeah.
But most of the
And
time,
just real quick, for context reasons, can you just, like, in one sentence, explain what the Oaks is?
the Oaks is a preparation school where you learn a certain job field and do your high school academics at the same time. So when you are out of high school, you can get a job in a certain field like construction, veterinary assisting, or even cosmetology, which is like hairstyling. I think that's what it is. But even auto engineering and diesel mechanics.
Right. Okay, thank you for that, just because we needed some context for people who aren't aware.
Right.
So yeah, let's move on to, I guess, the next segment. So the way we wanted to do this video was kind of like start light forms of acceptance, and then gradually moving towards bigger things to accept.
Yeah.
So we've talked about how high school and these nice moments that we might take for granted come to an end. And we've talked about, to a shorter extent, relationships, pets,
Yeah.
all of these things. So what do you think is harder to accept?
The hardest thing to accept personally is the loss of I feel like anyone could agree is no matter if you had a good relationship with them or not, is family, sibling, parent, grandparent, doesn't matter. That losing them would be the hardest thing to accept out of everything, is what I feel like.
Yeah. And with that, do you want to get into your story?
Yeah.
All right.
So when I still went to the main high school, I was not very well known, but my last name was more well known because of my older brother, RJ. And while he didn't go to our school, he went to a private one. He was very well known because he played basketball, and he was a very large personality, not only because he was 6'8", but he also just, every time he entered any room, he brought this energy with him, no matter what, where anything he would say, it was going to make you crack a grin or something, because he always knew how to make anyone laugh. Because when you see a 6'8" guy walk into a room, you're kind of, wait, what? What? Whoa. Then
Whoa.
you're kind of just blown away. And that was the thing I loved, because when parents always like come to see their kids and bring them lunch at school, anytime my mom would come or bring us lunch, she'd always bring RJ, or at least some of my brothers. And if RJ came, I was like, come on, I gotta show you to everyone in my class. And the funny thing was, by the time we were doing that in high school, anytime we walked into the class, he would have to duck under the doorway. And they're just, Gus, who is that? I was like, yeah, that's just my brother RJ. You know, he's kind of tall.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
But my junior year of high school, RJ was in college. Well, sort of. He was, the last 2 years, from sophomore to junior year, he'd been in college, but he dropped out at one point, then was going to try and go back in. But what we didn't realize at the time was he was suffering from bipolar disorder. And I believe there's 2 versions of it. One is a lot more drastic than the other, where it affects you a lot more. And I believe he had bipolar disorder 1.
Yeah, there's type 1 and type 2. They both, bipolar disorder, keyword bi, means there's like there's a high and a low.
Yes.
Type 1 is very extreme, with high cases of mania, which is just very hyperactive, almost strong, happy emotions. And then the latter half.
Yeah.
Is,
And the other one is kind of, you have more highs than lows, I believe, and you stay in a more constant pace.
Yeah, type 2 is more, it's less extreme, but they still exist.
Yeah. And that's not to say you shouldn't take it any less seriously.
Right.
It just,
there's a difference is all.
Exactly.
And with that, I'll let you continue. It's just interesting.
So RJ, he suffered from bipolar disorder 1, and we didn't realize it until it was a bit too late, because he'd always been very energetic in general. He was always running around trying to do stuff, and he worked out a lot. But when he finally came off those highs, it was almost like he died, pretty much, because you wouldn't, if he left the room, he looked and just seemed like a dead person walking, because he'd just come out of his room, grab his snack, go back in, or sometimes he just wouldn't leave his room at all for like almost 2 or 3 days at a time, maybe more.
Oh.
And it was weird because we just didn't know what was going on, and we knew he was on medication for it, but the thing was, he wasn't taking his medication, because in the past years, there had been times where he'd be on this medication, he'd start feeling good, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to try and go off for a while.
Oh.
then he'd go off of it. He'd stay good for a while. He'd stay in a good place, be able to keep control of everything.
Right.
Then it'd just come crashing down. He'd basically go cold turkey, as they put in terms. And we could do, because since he was 18, we couldn't force him to go to therapy. We couldn't
Right.
say, you need to go see the doctor, you need to take your medication. He was able to make his own choices. And
he probably thought that because he was feeling good for a while after the medication,
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong, but was he just like, oh, well, I feel better now. There's no point in taking this.
that's exactly it. It's just thought, oh, well, if I'm able to stay like this when I'm on the medication, I should be able to stay like this when I'm off of it.
Right.
And then he'd stay like that for a good while. I can't remember exactly how long, but eventually it would end at some point. And when it ended, it always took a very big toll on him. And one of the worst parts was his mind just never stopped. Like, even from a kid, he was always worrying about stuff. He was always asking questions. He was always like, Santa's still going to bring me presents this year? Or he just, even as a kid,
Like, would never forget anything.
not that I'd forget, it's just his mind never stopped. It was always running stuff. He always needed to keep moving, because that's the way it was for him. When he was up there, when he was feeling good and everything, he wanted to keep it going. He didn't want it to end, because when he knew if it ended, it was not going to be good.
I think that's part of mania too.
Yeah,
Just you can't stop. It's almost like a workaholic.
exactly. You have those good moments. You just like, I want to keep this feeling going. I need to keep it going. I can get so much done.
Mhm.
Then as soon as it ends, you're like, oh no, what? Oh, why is this happening? What did I?
It's
But
like running full speed and then just stopping on a dime.
exactly, it's extremely hard to do, and it takes a lot out of you.
And you feel all of the momentum just crashing back onto you from a reaction, like a physical reaction,
Yeah.
like Newton's law. But it's like, why would everyone needs to stop at some point? But why would you want to stop when the going's good? So with that, I get it, you know?
Yeah. But for him, the last 2 years, it became kind of harder. He stopped going to his classes because he just couldn't focus with his mind always going and everything. So he just focused more on working. He had a job and was just trying to make a lot of money so he could do stuff and still be able to hang out with his friends. But he was also trying to work out and try and stay healthy, because he was like, he was always going, yeah, I want to beef up, then cut myself so I can be jacked. I just want to look really good. I want to be like Arnold and stuff.
Right.
Like, one of his heroes was like, he even got the haircut like him, was Dolph Lundgren, the big blonde guy from, I think, the third Rocky. He's the Russian guy they jack full of drugs and everything. Fighting machine there is. And that
Yeah.
one summer he even got a haircut so he looked like him, and it looked pretty spot on.
That's
But
funny.
eventually even though he was still doing that, sometimes it was just hard for him to still keep going and get out of bed some days. But during junior year, that's when it got really bad, because one of the times he got into an argument with our parents. He was like, "You're a horrible mother. You shouldn't. I don't understand why I even love you, or why I've ever said that to you. You are horrible to us. You never let us do anything, and you don't do anything for us." And we kicked him out of the house we said, "You're gonna go stay with our dad for a few days, and we're gonna see what happens from there." And that same exact night, my dad found him trying to set up a session where he was going to go smoke with his friends. And the whole point was we were trying to stop this, and we didn't want stuff like that from happening.
Yeah.
my dad found out about him like setting that up that night at his house, my brother just gathered all of his stuff, walked all the way back to our house, and that is a extremely long walk from where my dad used to live. So
Okay.
I had been in bed. I didn't find out about any of this until the next day when I came home from school.
Oh, wow.
Evidently, he walked through the night. Like, they had my brother's best friend looking. All my parents were looking. They had some cops out looking for him, but no one saw him anywhere. And by the time he was home, he texted my mom or someone, and they found him, and everyone just went back. And he didn't go back to our dad's, so he just stayed here. He apologized for everything, and everything was good again for a while.
Huh.
And then the summer, right before my junior year started, well, like soon after it started, this was around a few months in, I think around Christmas time. I had an old Xbox I was going to give to a friend, and that same day after I took it, unplugged everything, was getting it all out of the box, I was also going to buy an Xbox One X. But when
Okay.
upstairs with the box and everything, he was like, "Hey, I'll buy it off you for a good $150 and everything." I was like, "No, thanks, man. I'm giving this to my friend." He's like, "Gus, come on. I'm your brother." And I was like, "I know, but I already planned on giving this to my friend." And it was just one of those times where it didn't sit well with him, and more of the mania kicked in. And he
Or like
kind of,
intense bargaining?
not intense bargaining, but more like, "Gus, why aren't you letting me buy this from you? I'm your brother. I'm giving you free money." I was like, "Yes, but I don't want the money. I'm going to give this to my friend as a gift. That's the whole point of me doing
Yeah.
this." Because I bought the Xbox One X with a bunch of gift cards I had acquired and everything, and some money I still had in my bank account.
Hmm.
And I was able to get that so I didn't really need his money,
Yeah.
and I didn't
It was
have,
just weird,
yeah.
right?
But at that same time, I was also dog sitting for some friends of ours, and while I was away from the house, my brother tried to start a group chat with all my other siblings on trying to make them agree with him that, oh, our mom favors him over everyone, all of us. She favors him favors him so much more than the rest of us. She treats him better. She gets him more stuff. But luckily, they all didn't really listen to him, and they just kind of left the group chat and everything. They told our
Yeah.
mom.
That's weird behavior.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, it was the mania kicking in, and he was getting mad at our mom again. But by the next day and everything, we had to say, "RJ, we're gonna have to do this again. You're gonna go stay with your dad for the next few days, but you can still come over here. We still love you. We just want you to try and cool off a bit." Because
And sorry to interrupt, but this whole time he was off the medication.
yes,
Okay.
he had been off it since a bit after sometime in July, maybe, I think. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. And this
But
happened around Christmas time, you said?
yeah, it was 2019.
Okay. So this was a while back.
Yeah. But
All right, that's all I wanted to say.
yeah. But he apologized to me the next night and everything. I said, "It's okay. I just wish you'd be able to keep a cooler head. I still love you. You're my brother." He's like, "Thank you. I'm glad you can accept my apology." But I didn't. The last time I saw him I was leaving to go back to that house to dog sit. Then Christmas Eve, we usually do this thing where our grandparents come over and we all kind of just have dinner and everything. We just say hi, open a few presents early that our grandparents bring over.
Yeah.
And he wasn't there that night on Christmas Eve. And it was kind of weird, but he was staying with our dad. So our dad was going over to his girlfriend's house because her family was having a huge Christmas party. And then he was going to go see our grandma and his mom later that night. And they were all just going to eat a bit and maybe open some gifts or just watch some TV.
And was he supposed to go with them?
He wasn't supposed to go with them, but when our dad was leaving, he was leaving at the same time. He said he was going to go to the gym and
Okay.
he'd see our dad later at our grandma's later.
Or RJ said that?
RJ did,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
But thing was, we didn't. He was going to try and go to the gym, but the gym was closed, all of them, since it was Christmas Eve and it was like almost 8, maybe like 7 o'clock at night, so most of them weren't going to be open. And what we didn't realize is he was while we were opening gifts and everything at our house, he texted my sister, "Tell everyone I love them and Merry Christmas." What we didn't realize at the time was at that moment, he was driving up to Columbus, and RJ was, when he was focused on something, there was nothing that could stop him. It's like tunnel vision. If he had his mindset on something, nothing was going to stop him. It was the same thing with working out. But he was driving up to Columbus, and he messaged his ex-girlfriend, I'm sorry I was so horrible to you. You were the one. I just didn't realize it. I should have done so much better. I'm sorry." And that was one of the last things he texted her. And what we didn't, and the girlfriend tried to contact our mother, and since she didn't have her phone on her, we didn't know this until later. I had gone back to the house to dog sit, and we had been told RJ was somewhere in Columbus, but we didn't know what he was doing. All we knew was he was on top of a building somewhere. And my sister, she had a great relationship with him. They were a dynamic duo whenever they were together. But me and him were kind of just like, yeah, we're brothers. That's about it. But she had messaged him like, RJ, are you okay? Please come back. Can we go for a drive? Stuff like that, because they used to go for drives at night every once in a while. But he wasn't responding to anyone. Well, it took them a few hours before they were able to tell us anything, because we all have Life 360, which I feel like most parents have on their kids' phones nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But he turned his tracking off a long time ago, so we didn't know where his was. And since we contacted the police, the hard part was it was from several different counties, because it was here where we live, it was up there in Columbus, and they had to do a lot of communication between all the stations, and it took them a while. But they finally got back to my parents, and 2 sheriffs showed up to our door. I wasn't here because I was still out doxing. I had my mom updating me whenever they could. She told me they found his phone and they were going to get him. Then at about, I think maybe 11:30 or so, I got a call from my stepfather saying, "Gus, come home. We need to talk and everything." I was like, "All right, yeah, I'll be there in a bit." And
wait, real quick. When you got that text, what did you think it was?
I thought, oh, they found him. He's gonna be there, but we're gonna be sending him off to a spot to help him with his mental health. We're gonna help him get better. He may have. I don't know if he's gonna be able to leave, but we're gonna make sure he gets better. That's what I know what we're gonna do. But when I got there, his car wasn't there, and all the lights on were inside. And I thought, well, if he was here, wouldn't the cop car still be here, or something like that? Then I was trying to get inside through our garage, but it wasn't opening and everything. And I hear my stepdad, and he goes, "Gus." I look over, I was like, "Hey." I just kind of see this look on his face, and his eyes are kind of teary and everything. I was like, what's happening? He just goes, we lost him, Gus. And just, I go in and everyone's in our living room. My mom's face is red and her eyes are just pouring with tears and she's heaving. And I just see my sister kind of holding on to her and everything. I was just like, wait, this is actually happening? He's gone? And it's just, it takes a minute sometimes, like before the realization sets in.
I can't even imagine that.
And it was weird because most people, you'd think, oh, their heads are racing because they're like, oh, what am I supposed to do? What can I do right now? My head was like a desert ghost town from the 1800s where all I could imagine was tumbleweeds going through it at that moment.
Yeah, I was thinking tumbleweed.
Yeah. And I just, my grandparents were also there because they were still up. And since we didn't know where my brother was, as soon as they also found out, they came over to try and console my mom and everything. And it's just, everyone's just sitting in that room. We're all just sitting there kind of looking at each other like, what are we supposed to do right now? Because it's like, it's midnight and we're just sitting there and we're just going, what are we supposed to do right now? We're not going to be able to, he's not coming back, and we just didn't know what to do. So
what can you do?
It's exactly it. There's nothing you can do at that moment. So since we were going to wait till Christmas Day, it was midnight. So my mom's like, hey, it's Christmas. Why don't we open gifts? So because to try and lift the spirits, we're like, yes, we'll just open the gifts. So, because we didn't know what to do. So it was midnight. It's Christmas. Might as well go.
Yeah.
Open gifts. And that's exactly what we did. We just opened gifts. But after that, we went downstairs. My dad came over. We just put on a random movie and we all just fell asleep down there. And for the next few days, we didn't really do anything. Our friends came over, family friends came over, his friends came over. It was weird because his bedroom was like, if you came into our garage and looked to our left, there's his bedroom. Every day, if you're just sitting in a living room somewhere, you'd see that door open and you just see a huge figure coming out. But for the next few weeks, all you saw was just this hallway and this closed door, and in the back of your head, like, all right, he's gonna come out there any second now, right? He's gonna walk out. He's just gonna be like, hey guys. But he never did because he was gone. His mind that night, my mom says it best. That night, it wasn't truly him up on that building. It was that other side of him. It was that mania. It was that point where he was focused on that. Oh, he messed up with his first girlfriend. She was going to be the one. And that he also thought, yeah, no, my family doesn't care for me because they protected Gus again. It's not that they just love him. It's that no one in my family loves me. I'm not loved by them. It's all fake. And that it wasn't him. That couldn't have been him because RJ was one of the biggest like impacts in my life, no matter what. He made me always want to be better at everything because I always saw him doing so much. But when I think back to that night and him, and all I can think is he thought that none of us were there for him and that we wouldn't do anything to help him. So he thought that was the best option. the jump, that it just makes me mad to think there was so much we could done if he had just been able to talk to us, or if I had talked to him just a tiny bit more, or said, "Hey, I love you," or just one thing. It felt like he could have done more, but the what ifs, and
Right.
it's just, you have to learn to move on from that. It's a hard thing to move on from, but you do have to learn to move on from it. That it happened, and it's in the past now. There's nothing you can do. It's weird. It's the only way you can put it. It's weird when it actually happens, because no one ever thinks it's going to happen to them.
No. I'm sorry.
Yeah. A lot of us were. It's weird, because no one really ever expects it to happen. But when it finally does, you're kind of just, you're in shock.
Yeah. Did you feel guilty
I mean,
because of it?
I did, because all of us felt guilty at some point for it, but I felt guilty because I personally, like I said, he and I, our relationship was, yeah, we're brothers. He and I never really got along on anything. And last thing I remember, like I said, last thing we did was we sort of had an argument, but we apologized and everything. But I felt like he had that argument in his head, like that it was still in his head that night. That, oh, Gus, he's not selling me his Xbox, or he's able to get away with that. It's not that I didn't. I felt like I was. I realize now I felt like I didn't do a good enough job as a brother for him. Like, he may have been my older brother, but I'm still supposed to be there for him. I'm still supposed to be able to do stuff for him. I'm supposed to be his little brother who's like, yeah, you can do it. Yeah.
Well, do you think you did anything wrong, or you just couldn't have predicted the way things were going to turn out? Like with his mania episodes, his withdrawal from the medicine.
I think it's a combination of everything, because, like, I felt guilty from all the times I was like, I don't understand why you're my brother. I don't even like you. You're like, we'd have all these arguments when we're young and everything. And I'm just like, I hate you. I don't want you to be my brother anymore. And you just storm off. And one of the last things I did with my brother was, even though we apologized, we had an argument. And I always hated it leaving like that, because I didn't want him to have the last thing remembering me was an argument, and him having to apologize to me first and me accepting that apology. I wanted us to be able to see each other and go, hey, even though I wasn't going to give it to you, I didn't mean anything by it. I already made the decision to give it to my friend. It's not that I don't love you. It's not that I don't care about you. It's not that I didn't want you to be happy. It's just I already made a decision. And I wanted you to be okay with that, but you weren't.
But also, I guess you could think of it like how your mom said. I'm no expert and I don't know the ins, but I mean, you know that he's been struggling recently, like with the withdrawal, just kind of feeling lost, the relationship ending, and then
that relationship with his first girlfriend, that I was still a freshman in high school when that ended. It was just with him off the medicine, that always came back to him. Like, he'd always think back on stuff and say, oh, I should have been able to do this. And he'd always ask my mom, oh, was she the one for me? Did I really mess up there? And it was just, it was
That's
a lot of times.
Because that was a while ago. That was years ago before.
Yeah, but that's when his mind was going. It was going, and there was no stopping it. It was never quiet for him up there. There was always something up there moving, making him think about something, and I never realized it was like that for him. I didn't know a lot about what was going on for him. All I knew was RJ can be really energetic a few weeks out of the month sometime, but every once in a while he just doesn't move or anything, and it's weird. I didn't really know. Like, I knew he had the mental disorder, but I really didn't know what it did to him. Besides, oh yeah, he's energetic, and sometimes he's not.
Yeah, and when you're young, like you were and still are, if you think about it, like you might know what bipolar disorder is and know how it works and everything, but the implications are still always gray.
I mean, you can do all the research in the world about it, but unless you have that disorder, you're never really going to know what it's like to have it. You're not going to know how it affects you on a daily basis, on anything. You're not going to know how easy it is to make it through some days or how hard it is to can make it through the next hour.
Yeah. And with that, just because I'm kind of looking at the time, I wanted to ask you, what is the most, like, obviously this has been very traumatic for you and your family and friends, and it's just, it's not, it's not good. It's tragedy.
That's exactly it.
But eventually, as time heals and everything, you go through the process of acceptance. As you know, at the end of the day, you have to move on. So I wanted to ask you, what is the most important lesson you learned through all this?
That everyone says it, that you should always check in on your friends, and like, always don't just sit there in silence, but like ask them how they're doing. And I have to say that it's true. You need, don't just be like, hey, so how was your day? How's your week? How you been? Be like, how are you doing? Like, don't just say, oh, I'm good. Tell me how you're actually doing. I don't want you to think I'm just gonna sit here and make jokes with you. I want to know how you're actually doing. I want to know if there's anything I can do. If you've been down, I want to know if I can be there for you in more ways than one, instead of just sitting here cracking jokes with you. I want you to know I'm here for you. I'm always going to be there, and that no matter what, if you're a friend, if you're family, I'm going to love you, and that I'm going to care about you. And I don't want you to think that you're alone, because you're not.
Do you think that kind of like, do you think you've kind of learned more of what it means to love somebody because of this? Just a weird thought.
I think so, because it's just like I said, siblings. When you grow up with siblings, it's always kind of like a love-hate relationship in a way, because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, my brother stole this from me, but I took this from him, and we had these arguments.
Yeah, it's just the way siblings work, I guess.
Yeah, but what you don't realize, and my dad always said this to us, is family is the most important thing you will ever have in your life, and that you shouldn't take it for granted. And he is so very right, because I only got 17 years with my brother, and I took those 17 years for granted, because there was so much more I could have done with him. I could have talked to him about stuff, but I chose to not do any of that. I talked to him every once in a while. When we
But
were
was
young,
that your fault?
I personally, I feel like it was, but it's just, that's how he and I worked.
Right.
We
It's like
both
You go. Sorry.
We both we had a mutual understanding of, hey, we don't get along, but we're brothers. We love each other. It's just not easy for us to show it.
Right. Well, that's why I think I don't think it is your fault, just in my opinion. Although with that said, I do want to say as a side note, it really makes sense why in a situation like this you would think it's your fault. So I don't think that's wrong or correct or anything. It's just your emotions are your emotions, and you're going to feel things no matter what anyone says or whatnot. But I guess what's just on my mind is I think if we're looking objectively or as close as objectively as we can, as we obviously don't know what the true answer is to things, um, how can it be your fault? It can't be your fault. Like, sure, we did take things for granted, and everyone does that, and everyone will do that. But there was no way of knowing this. There's things we could have done, but without knowing the result.
It just goes back to the what ifs. Like, well, if I'd done, what if I'd talked to them a bit more?
Yeah. And like you said, you were younger than him. You guys had the classic clashing dynamics between brothers.
It was a 2-year difference, but it's just felt like a lifetime.
Yeah.
He was the big social guy, and people always say we looked alike, but he and I were two very different people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you and my friends know I'm not that much of a social guy. I'm not an introvert, but I like to stay in and just relax. But he went out with friends. He'd go out partying and stuff on a pretty basis. And then he'd also just go to hang out with them. Then me, I liked staying home. I liked playing video games with my friends just on Friday night. It's not much. I like the simple stuff.
Yeah, you're just different people in that regard.
Yeah, but people were always like, "How are you? You, I feel like you two are so alike. You look alike, and you kind of like sound alike or look alike, like act alike a tiny bit." But they just that's because they saw us outside of our home. They saw us out there. They didn't realize what we're actually like, how much we argued or stuff like that. Even though,
Let's just be outward looking in, but can't really get the in, you know?
Yeah.
So, I guess my next question is, how was the grieving process for you? Like you told the story and we've gotten some insight, but I guess if you were to kind of chunk it into a big picture idea, because we're almost running out of time, but we'll go over a little bit. Like, you want to just define it?
The only way I can put it is it's going to be different for everyone. For me personally, I didn't feel like I had to do a lot because it was just, he and I never had that much of a relationship. We were brothers. We talked a bit every now and again, but that was about it. Everyone was crushed because it was RJ. He brought everything into this house. You would know he's there because that was him. He was the big personality. But for me, it was kind of just like, I just have to learn to just keep going day by day. It's just, he's not going to be in that equation anymore. I'm not going to see him walk out of his room, or I'm not going to come and see him make another protein shake or something. It was me just trying to say, all right, you just need to make it through the day. That's all you got to do.
Just simple things.
Exactly.
Getting through it.
Just remember to eat. Remember to get up on time. Remember to take care of yourself.
Right.
Don't just do nothing. Just you have to. He's not going to be there, and you have to realize that. But you have to be able to keep moving,
Right.
because you stay there in that moment and keep thinking back on it. You're not going to be able to move forward from there.
Yeah. And do you think you've accepted it?
I think I have. Personally, I would never really know. I don't think anyone truly knows if they ever finally reach what they think is acceptance. I
Mm.
think I may have gotten there, because it's not that like I'm always gonna miss him. He was my brother. But
Yeah.
I think I'm able to go from I'm able to make it through each day. It's not like I'm always thinking about him each day. Like he
Yeah.
pops in my head every once in a while, but I'm able to make it through each day. It's not like every day is a burden. I keep trying to see the best side of my day, and I try to focus on that instead of being swamped in all of that negative feelings or
Yeah.
bad that happens.
And also, just acceptance doesn't mean forgetting the past, forgetting what happened, blocking it out, removing everything. It's
Exactly.
just acknowledging what happened, going through the processes. Like there's the Kubler-Ross theory of the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Yeah.
It's all a process, and you never truly accept, like you said. I think that's a great point, that you never really know. But
Because it's
yeah.
you live with yourself your entire life,
Mhm.
but you never know when you finally reach the point of, yeah, I know I made it there, because not everyone, you never really know, is this the point where I finally know I made it, or is
Yeah.
there still a bit more from here?
Maybe, and this isn't exactly a bad thing, but just it's the way it is. Maybe you never reach it entirely. Maybe it's not meant to be reached entirely,
Yeah,
even if it's like 99%.
that 99% is still enough, because even
Right.
even though if you can never get to that 100%, you're still almost there.
Yeah.
Like it's it's better to have even like a 30% of the way there to acceptance, rather
Mhm.
than none at all, because you may be like a quarter of the way there, or 30%, but you're still somewhere. You still made progress.
Yeah.
You were able to understand and accept a small part of that. You may
Mhm.
not have accepted the rest, but you still had enough of your ability to understand, this happened. I'm going to try and better myself. I'm
Yeah.
going to make it better than what it was before, rather than just saying, I I don't know what I'm going to do. They're gone. I
Right.
can't do anything.
It's almost like the meaning of acceptance is, like, of course, it's the base definition, accepting what happened. But really, the bigger idea is what happened was tragic. It sucked. Like lack of a better word. It was
It,
just bad.
it's just crap. That's all it was.
Yeah, but it's one thing to accept, but it's I just find it beautiful when you're able to not only just accept what happened, but almost make an oath, like a new conviction within your heart that you are going to make life better. Make sure this never happens again. Make sure you're taking care of your own self, like keeping yourself at a higher place,
Mhm.
taking care of your friends, like you become wise.
Yeah, it's not that it's not that thing of, once it happens to you, you understand all the secrets of the universe. It's more that it's more you just this could happen to anyone, and that's what you need to. That's the biggest part you need to realize about it is it can happen to anyone, because it did happen to you, and it was tragic. But since it happened to you, and you know there are signs and there's stuff you can try to do to help, you need, with the best of your ability, to share that with other people. And if there are people already in that situation shown signs, you may not be able to do much, but you need to do something to try and help that person. You need to talk to them, or at least try and give them advice. And even if they don't listen to that advice, find someone else they talk to and try to tell them about what's going on. Try and show them, because some people are just, since most people don't know about this, a lot about this stuff, they don't know the science, they don't know what it's like. They're just gonna think, oh, they're just having a bad week, you know? It's not just that. It's something they truly need help with, and you need to do the best of your ability to spread or tell people about that, and make sure that that doesn't have to happen to anyone else, because it happened to you, and you don't want that happening to anyone else.
And I feel like a big stigma is just, oh, I don't really need to do anything, because if I just do something as small as check in on them, see how they're doing, like, that's so minuscule. Why would that ever accomplish anything?
Yeah, but
I don't want to put effort in doing something bigger, but really, as done to death, that horse is just beaten down already. Like, everyone knows this, but doesn't truly like listen to it. Just the idea that a small gesture goes a long way. We've all heard this before, you know? Like, this horse is so brutally beaten by this point. But ever thought to just like listen to it? Because it's actually kind of true.
It may be beaten, but it's one of the biggest truths out there. Like, personally, one of my friends, every once in a while, since junior year, I went to a whole new place, starting a whole new school, bunch of new people, and I couldn't exactly I could keep in contact with my friends, but it wasn't as easy as seeing them 5 days a week. Every once in a while, he just call me up and be like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And we just talk for a few hours.
Yeah.
And even though I'd seem annoyed during the call, because hey, it's us friends, we joke around with each other. Haha.
Even that's good if you think about it.
Exactly. It's just by the end of the call, if we're both about to go to bed or about to go do something else, after the call ended, I realized I'm really thankful he did that, because it just feels, because once I went to that new school, it was starting over, and it was kind of like a brand new world almost, in a way, because it's like it's a jungle and you don't know what's happening yet.
And that of itself is like what we talked about at the beginning, like this change that you have to accept.
Exactly. And because he was doing that, I never really told him how much I appreciated it, but it just made me so happy knowing that, hey, he knows I'm still here and he wants to know I'm doing well. It's not that he's just doing that for his own personal pleasure because he wants to talk to someone. He's checking in on his friend.
He cares about you.
Exactly. Because I never really did. Like, the most I talked to my friends was either at lunch or while I play Xbox with them.
Yeah.
But he, every few weeks or so, just on a random day, he'd just call me up and go, "Hey man, how's it going?" And we just talk for a while, and I appreciated it so much, and I never told him about that.
Yeah. Well, maybe he'll hear this time.
Hopefully.
And with that, I think this is a good stopping point. But seriously, Gus, thank you so much for coming on here, man.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
I hope your story resonates with a lot of people.
I hope so, because I'm pretty sure I told you about this last night. I want people to know that if they've gone through this, they're not the only ones. That they should be able to talk to their friends or people who've even had to go through it, because it's not something you should go through by yourself. It's painful.
Yeah. And we're all networked anyway, like with our connections, our friends.
Exactly.
So you can't be alone. You can't escape. Even if you tried, you can't be alone.
Because we got so many ways to keep in contact now. Like
Right.
with our phone, with all the technology. I sound like my parents, but with all this technology, I know most adults say like, "Oh, you're rotting your brains," and you just
look at your kids with your stinking phones.
Exactly. Most of this is one of the biggest ways we keep in contact. Snapchat, Instagram, just texting in general. It's a way to keep constant contact with someone. And
especially in a time like this where we can't really see people often.
Yeah.
So yeah. And with that, I guess we'll end it here. So this has been Acceptance and Loss. And thanks everybody for listening. I'll see you guys next time.